How did we even get here? What is going on? What are we surviving?
We're surviving late stage capitalism specifically.
The onslaught of having to deal with everything at the same time.
Right. The problem is that we're conscious that we hate where we are.
Yeah.
That creates a system of just getting by, putting your head down and hustling. And
yes.
At one point you look up and it's like,
where
what
did it go?
happened?
All the Calamity.
All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to All the Calamity, a podcast where we discuss all the calamity in the world and how we're surviving the chaos. I'm your host, Zoe, and I'm here with my two sisters, Kirstin and Charis. But since this is our first episode, we figured we'd take some time to just get ourselves introduced, let you guys know who we are. So I'll start. Like I said, I'm Zoe. I'm the eldest of 6 siblings at 28 years old. I enjoy painting and journaling in my leisure time. Many moons ago, I received my Bachelor of Arts in Film and have since found ways to use my education to do everything but work in the film industry. I have multiple passion projects running at any given moment, and presently, I'm trying to intuit what it is that I'm meant to do with my life. I'm super single but happy to never settle. I'm imaginative and a little aloof, but I love good discussion and learning new things. I am currently living with my sisters, who are also my co-hosts that I've mentioned, and they'll be introducing themselves next. Kirstin, take it away.
Hi, listeners. I'm Kirstin, the second oldest at 26 years old. I probably have the most type A personality out of the 3. I confess I have a mental and physical to-do list for just about everything. A few fun facts about me. I am a proud plant mom, first and foremost. I also love spending early mornings at coffee shops because I am a morning person, just not before I've had coffee. Very important. Vanilla is my signature scent. I'm a bit of a neat freak. Jazz and R&B are my favorite music genres, and I'm a writer and aspiring film director with a degree in film and television. But most importantly, I am 1/3 of this dream team creative powerhouse right here on the mic. That is All the Calamity. Charis, what you got?
Hi, everybody. My name is Charis. I am 22, the youngest of the 3 here. I'm basically the middle child of our family and have many of the general traits of a middle child. I am a singer-songwriter, producer, and content creator spanning different art forms. I went to school for music industry studies and graduated in May 2020 amidst a global pandemic. Then shortly after, I packed up all my things from my parents' house and moved to a new city where I now live with my 3 older siblings. And currently, I'm the co-host of a soon-to-be very successful podcast.
Speak on it.
That's called
Absolutely.
manifestation. Okay, we're here for it. So guys, this is our first episode, which means we have a lot to talk about.
A lot.
So what are we going to talk about, you guys?
So this episode's topic is, well, y'all have seen the title, Time Flies When You're Trying to Survive. And ooh, child, there's so much to talk about. I have my notes. I don't know about you guys. If y'all want to kick it off somewhere, should I get it kicked off?
Well, I would start with a question like, how did we even get here? Like, what is going on? What are we surviving?
Yeah. So I think right now we're just surviving, for us at least here in the US of A, we're surviving a capitalist society. I think what is called like late stage capitalism specifically. Yeah, there's been a lot of effects, but there's just like so many factors that contribute to what we're going through right now, whether it's like external factors or personal choices. Like America just has like a long history of like slavery, imperialism, colonialism, gentrification, like the list goes on, and like we're in it. We're suffering.
Surviving a pandemic.
That part, yeah.
Let's just sprinkle that in there if we weren't dealing with enough already.
Absolutely. Charis, you want to throw some in the mix? What are we going through?
Everything, all at once. I think that is one of the biggest things that in this current day and age, what we're dealing with is just the onslaught of having to deal with everything at the same time. And I think that's what makes it feel like it's going so fast, because we have the internet. We're like connected in this way that current generations before weren't. and you just have to see everything happening and then feel also like you can't do anything about anything. And then you have your own personal life, and it's just so much, and it's overwhelming. And I just don't know if we figured out as a society yet how to actually deal with it. And it's taking its toll. So
yeah, I definitely feel that way. Like, you know, I don't know if you guys have ever heard like celebrities or famous people talk about like once they get to a certain stage in their life, like they look back on their youth and they're like, it just literally was like a snap of a finger. Like my life went by so fast.
Youth is wasted on the young.
Yeah. But I think we're looking at a life now like with social media, and there's like just so much. I hate being that person who's like social media, but there's just so much like performance to life now. I think everyone in a sense feels that sense of time moving at that kind of pace that celebrities previously talked about. So because I think it's like an added mixture of like trying to survive life and then also performing life, watching other people perform life and like thinking it has to be this certain thing, and there's all this pressure to make life into something, and that adds to it. I don't know if I'm making sense, but
I definitely agree. And I would say, I mean, the misconception that time flies when you're having fun, I think is interesting, because I think with our generation, I feel like we're so in tune and like we're very like live in the moment. So I feel like if we were genuinely having fun, we would be conscious enough to like, hey, I'm going to stop and smell the roses. Right. The problem is that we're conscious that we hate where we are.
Yeah.
And
we
so
don't want
to.
We do not want to be conscious.
That creates a system of just getting by and like kind of putting your head down and hustling. And at one point you look up and it's like,
where did it
happen?
Go?
Like, how did I, whether it's wasting time or you literally just were not soaking it in because there was nothing you wanted to soak in. And I think that's so sad that we're at that point. And obviously there have been, trust me, as an African American, there were generations and generations before us that were in a much worse position. But I don't think that negates the fact that we're still coping and we're still not fully embracing life.
Yeah. Speaking of that, and I don't know if any of you guys want to kind of touch on this topic, because this is something I was looking into a lot before this episode, but you know, we think about our ancestors like being enslaved in this country in different forms. So you had like actual chattel slavery, then you had like sharecropping, which to me is just another form of slavery. You had Jim Crow, which prevented people from entering like not just certain areas of the country, but also from like upward mobility and that sort of thing. And then you have now like the prison industrial complex.
We hear buzzwords like slavery and it's like, okay, well, you know, Black people aren't enslaved anymore. But I think it's important to also remember it's not just the term slavery, but it's the dehumanization of us. And that is still going on. And all of the things that you just mentioned is literally us, like dignity being stripped away and we're being dehumanized and valued less. And in many instances, literally tortured, and it's still going on.
Yeah. And I think also it's like, I want people to like kind of expand their definition of slavery and understand that there are different types of slavery taking place today. I mean, obviously we know about human trafficking, the prison industrial complex. But I think even, you know, something very interesting, like when I was working in corporate, I very much felt enslaved to my job. I didn't feel like there was a way out. Even when I finally did quit, I lost something very important to me, which was health insurance, which was very scary. I have a chronic health condition, and I've since like accrued thousands of dollars of debt because when I didn't have health insurance, like I couldn't afford like basic treatment. So feeling enslaved to your job is a very real thing. So I was looking into it, and there was something called wage slavery, which refers to a person who literally, you know, we might think of it as someone living paycheck to paycheck, but literally cannot afford to lose their job. And they will do anything they can to keep that job because they cannot live without it. And I think beyond that, you have people who could maybe survive without their job, but the conditions of that are so poor that they still feel as they go into work every day like they don't have a choice. And I think we've created this idea in America that you have to have a job to live, and that in other, like in outside of the society that we live in isn't necessarily true. Like you can live off of the land. Like the earth is meant to sustain us. And so that might not be the option that you want, but you should feel like you have an option other than just staying employed somewhere, and that you can't live without this. Like to me, that is a form of slavery. And yeah, I don't know if you guys want to speak on that.
I would say at the least, like even if some people are like, okay, that's a stretch, I would say at the least not having options and feeling like you have to do something. I was telling Charis this other day, like that literally breeds depression. And just like Zoe said, when I was also working in corporate, that feeling of I need this to afford my life is so stressful and weighs so much on you that like I found myself literally waking up every day, like dreading waking up. And at that point, the only thing I wanted for myself was to not dread waking up. That was my only wish. I didn't know what that would look like. I didn't know what that was, but any life that could allow me to wake up and be at peace and be happy was what I wanted. And I think it wasn't just so much affording your lifestyle that these jobs provide, because a lot of these jobs do not even allow you to afford basic things. Depending if you're working minimum wage, you probably can't afford.
You hardly can afford your rent at that point.
And if you have children, it's just a whole thing. But I will say that it puts a price tag on your time, which I hate. Like your time is invaluable. And that's what it does. It's like, okay, well, your time is worth $7 or your time is worth...
Nobody's time is
exactly
worth $7.
Nobody. Not in this country, it's not.
And we need to stop acting as if people can buy our time, because I don't think... Yeah. There should be.
Oh wait, can I be really clear? Because I just said something that I realized could be misconstrued. When I say not in this country, it's not. I'm not talking about like, oh, people in other countries, like their time is worth that little. I'm talking about the cost of living, and that maybe there's somewhere where $7 is worth a lot more, but here it's not.
But yeah, Charis, you were gonna say.
No, just like sitting here listening, I'm just thinking of, especially in America, this month is Suicide Prevention Month.
Oh my God.
And it's just so ironic. So like companies send out, they did this like last year too. They'll send out like their whole little thing about how not to be anxious and I'm like, literally this job is breeding all of the depression and anxiety that I have. So, I mean, y'all could pay me to go home. That would fix that. But it's so sad because now currently with depression and mental health being a hotter topic currently in the world and in America, all these places like to pretend like they care. So you get, corporate people talking about it and this and the other and faking and lying about what they're doing for their employees to make it better and how they've implemented this, and it's just a bunch of crap. But it's just watching my coworkers and myself slowly fade into this.
It's the feedback loop.
Yeah, and slowly fade into this. I'm just... When I get off of work, all I'm doing is trying to find something to make this seem worth it.
Yeah.
And because work sucks so much of your time and energy, anything that you're going to find is something temporary and very quick. So it's like, duh, why people are drug addicts and drink a lot and go out and do meaningless things, because that's all they can afford. That's all they have time for. And they just need to feel something very quickly.
On that note, can I say, I think that's why in many ways the pandemic, or not the pandemic, but quarantining for people who are not sick hit people so hard, because we've created a system where people don't know how not to go out on Friday and go out to bars or go out to the club or go out just to a restaurant and get drunk or just find ways to cope. Some people, especially who are extroverts, fill that space, that void that they're feeling, or that lack of purpose with being around people and talking and
not
noise.
Having to sit with their own thoughts.
Yes. And that I think it's interesting because we'll talk more about this in another episode, but all of us being some form of an introvert, I think that experience was very different for us, and quarantining actually was very healthy because it allowed us
for
to
me, it's like,
reset.
let's do it again, another round.
Exactly.
But
yeah, I think also because we have episodes, spoiler alert, where we will talk more about like work life and corporate and all of that good stuff. I wanted to get you guys' opinion on what does it mean to survive relationships? Like, do you guys feel like we're surviving that aspect of our lives as well?
What relationships are we talking about here?
Well, that's up to you.
It could extend beyond, I think, romantic relationships, but I feel like we live in a very, very fragmented society. So like, I can't remember what it was, but I was watching something that talked about how at one point you would have been in a tribe of say 100 people and you would have known all those people very well because you would have gotten to know them over your entire lifetime. Whereas now the number of people we feel that we know that closely, like if you were to write them down, like for most people, they're not even in the same state as those people they've even been able to make those connections with, i.e. like your parents or your siblings. Like even then, like we don't even live in close proximity to those people anymore. So it's like we're so fragmented, and I feel like every relationship that we have, whether it's family, friends, heck, even like coworkers, if you're that desperate. Girl.
Wow.
No, I mean, no, like some people have really great coworkers. Like, no, like you can have really great coworker friends, but it can be so hard to maintain those friendships because we're dealing with everything we just stated previously. People are literally just trying to cope. And you think about like addiction, like in an extreme sense, and how that ruins relationships. I think on some extent, we all have these lesser addictions that we use to cope with like modern life. And it makes it hard for us to actually maintain our relationships because that's not our priority. We're trying to maintain our will to live. Like that's priority number one.
And the only thing that would really hold at this point relationships together is if you share maybe that addiction. So you're like going out with people or going drinking with people.
Addiction buddies.
Or, you know, nothing's wrong with video games, but like if you're someone who like that's what you do to cope, finding people that do that to cope. So like you're building relationships, not necessarily off a healthy behavior. And that's not to say you can't enjoy things with friends that y'all all happen to enjoy. There's nothing wrong with that. But it's like when your relationship is built around what you use to cope with your reality, that's not necessarily solid ground there. So it's very fragile at times.
Yeah. Or we think about even, and honestly, I'm going to go ahead and include myself in this to some extent. Like you think about like how flaky people are. And I think, you know, for me, I tend to have a lot of grace for that, you know, as frustrating as it may be, because I understand like, okay, I am not this person's priority, more than likely, not because they're just a bad person or because they don't like me or whatever the case may be. Like they're just having a hard time coping with life. And, you know, some days it's like, if I'm not feeling this, like, I don't think it's as simple as just saying like, oh, well, like you need to prioritize your friends. That's way easier said than done when you're trying to, again, just maintain your will to live any way possible. And sometimes that means like canceling on someone or not texting back.
Yeah, I would say obviously I don't propone being flaky. But
yeah, I'm not proponing it. I just understand it.
Communicating. Because you have to communicate. First of all, if you're friends with people, depending on where you are in the relationship, or even if it's not friends, but even if it's a romantic relationship, there needs to be a certain intimacy you have with that person where you can share like, hey, I'm either not doing well today. I just need some time alone.
But here, that means you have to invest in that friendship to get to that level of intimacy.
I think we've all kind of encountered that. But I think you have to be honest with yourself and be like, okay, like that's not the priority in my life right now.
Yeah.
Like I need to build myself up to a point where I want to share a life with other people. And I think honestly, that's in a way where I am now, just getting to the point where I feel like I can start adding in, okay, here's more interactions with people. Here's more, well, outside of being in a pandemic. But you know what I mean? Like where I have the energy, where I have the desire to even do that. So if you're not even at a place where you can communicate those things with people, then at least be at a place where you're sitting with yourself and you're being honest with yourself.
Yeah, I'm working on the healing.
And I was thinking about this before when we were still talking about kind of what the work environment and that pressure can breed. I feel like that entire thing, the way our capitalistic system is built up, clearly like it produces a consumer culture. And I don't think they want that to stop. But it was making me think of, I feel like that sort of feeling is so ingrained into us. I think a lot of people subconsciously actually see friendships that way. Like it's something like that's other deep. People are products to make you feel better.
Yeah.
And then when they don't,
you just
that's so true.
Put it away.
Let's talk about dating apps.
Exactly. Yeah.
Or not. I don't want to actually talk about it,
but that's literally when you're swiping on people. It's like, that's not the one I want. Like literally.
Or even not just swiping, but even once you start talking to people, the moment you decide I'm good, you feel so disconnected because they're not real to you.
Yeah.
So it's like, okay, I was done. I'm done with that now. Like on to the next thing.
Like TV shows.
Yeah.
Like I go from TV show to TV show to TV show. When it has that feeling, I watch a lot of shows and known for not finishing a lot of shows too. So like whenever I start a new show, it feels so good. Something about this new thing that you're experiencing, especially if like not a lot of people are watching it, for some reason that makes me like it more. But then you get 7 episodes in, or let's say there's multiple seasons, you watch 2 seasons, like binge watch it, you feel so happy, and then it just completely fades. And then you're like, I need another show to give me that same feeling. And I feel like people feel that way about people. Not necessarily in this purposeful way, like they're trying to use people, but I think we just have that sort of mindset in general about life. Because again, we're trying to cope. And it's like, I need friends to make me feel good. If they're not making me feel good, then what's really the point? Yeah. I need somebody else. So
yeah, and then there's another element of even outside of like regular genuine friendships, like this idea of networking and using people to like climb a ladder, whether that's in your career or just for a lot of people, even outside of like
it's just
terrible.
Yeah, I mean, but even outside of like not a typical, I can't think of the word, but like a traditional career, like now with social media, now with just all the digital world, I feel like there's so many elements of like, hey, I want this person because I'm starting this business and they would help promote or whatever. Right. Like there's so many different avenues now where like I feel like you could use people, and it's really unfortunate.
But our society breeds that.
Yeah.
Because they put people in such a state of desperation all the time. Like they just want to escape their situation. And it's like, well, this is the way to do it. It's the only way. Yeah.
And I think that also kind of ties into like this productivity culture as well. I can definitely speak for me and Zoe, like as technically as like business owners in a way, or people who have a business outside of like their work life.
Creative,
yeah. There is a pressure to like create and like produce and like promote. And I think we're
going to talk about that.
Oh yeah.
In more detail in another episode.
But I think we've taken a different route in a way that it's like, okay, let's feel this out.
Yeah.
How do we want it to feel? Because we've been in spaces where it didn't feel right. So I'm more concerned with how this is sustainable and how this affects my life and other people's lives. And I'm just going to say this really quick because I thought about it when we were talking about coping and we were talking about like drinking and like, you know, being around people all the time. And I'll have to call myself out on this one because, you know, in terms of productivity, what a lot of people use to be productive is coffee and caffeine. And there was a point when I realized when I was working a corporate job in finance, and even before that it's like, hey, no, I'm dependent. I need this to have the will to live. And I'm not even being funny. Like at some point, I literally don't think I could have gotten through a day. I don't know what I thought would happen, but I couldn't, like mentally. I could not get through the day without coffee. And I am proud to say that my relationship with caffeine has shifted because I've become a lot more conscious. So even this morning, because we're actually recording this at like 6 a.m., instead of grabbing coffee in the morning to like get me up and make me feel more alert, I was like, I'm going to get an herbal tea instead, you know, because it's healthier and because I realized my body doesn't just need caffeine to like give me this unnatural boost right now. And I don't think it's always bad. Like, I'm not saying coffee is horrible, but at least be aware of what you're using as a coping mechanism. I was also telling Charis the other day, like, in terms of drinking, I feel like it's very important, at least for me. I'm like, if you're going to drink and if that's something you decide to do in life, I've decided that I only drink when I'm already happy, because I think it's so easy to fall into it being a coping mechanism. So yeah, I just wanted to say that, maybe put that out there for anyone who feels the same way.
Yeah.
So.
And I don't know if Charis, were you about to say something on this? Because I have something I do want to add.
I was not. So you can
Okay.
go ahead.
I think we touched on this a little bit earlier. America, I feel like we operate like on a spectrum of addictions. And so you have what I like to call deadly addictions, and then you have unhealthy addictions. Unhealthy addictions to me are like those addictions that we all kiki and laugh about and relate over and act like it's not actually a problem when it very much is. Yeah. But it's like, you know, you always have that person who comes in the office and be like, oh, sorry, I haven't had my coffee. Need my coffee to function. It's the morning. Like, as though like needing coffee to be a decent person is like an okay thing. Like, if you need coffee to be like some like better version of yourself and to be functional, that's very unhealthy. Like, that's an unhealthy relationship, right? But then it's like we also have people with like very deadly addictions, whether it's like a deadly addiction to alcohol. Alcohol is one of those things, because it's so normalized, it's like it has to get so bad before people will actually even call it an addiction. But it can definitely be deadly. And then you have drug addiction. But I was reading this article, ironically, by the BBC, so it's not even like based in America, but it was talking about this author, I guess, who wrote this book about like late stage capitalism. But basically they said the past 2 decades, deaths of despair from suicide, drug overdose, and alcoholism have risen dramatically and now claim hundreds of thousands of American lives each year. So that's a thing, like deaths of despair. People can literally die of being sad. And I think that's unfortunately the place that we're in. And as much as people like to glamorize like the American dream and the American lifestyle, like this is where we are as a country. We may have all of these technological advances and these fancy jobs and even like commercial products and like things that people own, but people are deeply sad. Like their souls are dying and something needs to change, because it's not okay. And if you feel your soul dying, like don't let anyone invalidate that. Like that feeling is real, and it means that we need to change. Do not listen to anyone who tries to invalidate that feeling.
Amen.
Amen.
All right, guys. So we're going to move into our segments. Like each episode, we're going to have segments. So I'm going to introduce the first one, since you guys obviously are not familiar yet. This segment is called Say It Ain't So. And in this segment, one of us will have to share a story of something egregious that has happened to us, a friend or a loved one. But the fun doesn't end there. We raise the stakes by keeping a leaderboard of the wildest story week after week. And at the end of the season, we'll choose the winning story. So make sure you tune in each week to see if we have a Say It Ain't So segment and find out if this week's story will hold its lead. But without further ado, let's introduce the story.
Okay, guys, so it's Kirstin, and today I have the Say It Ain't So story. Where do I begin? So this is, was this year 2019 probably? It was definitely before 2020. I was still working in finance in my corporate job. I was stressed out. Honestly, this was probably like the 3rd or 4th year in a row where I was just kind of like, for different reasons, in and out of the hospital with like just strange ailments. Okay. So this is going to sound weird, but basically at this point, what had happened was for years at that point, I had, and when I say years, I mean like since I was almost a child, probably like 14-ish, I had a cyst in my arm. And anytime I would go to the doctor, they would be like, well, I mean, it's probably fine. It's probably just benign. I wouldn't really worry about it. But I could feel it. And I would always like, if I rubbed my hand over my arm, like I could feel it. It was weird. But anyway, at one point, it started growing. It sounds so gross, guys. But it started getting bigger and I could feel it and it was hurting. Like it had never hurt before. It was like throbbing. And I literally had to leave work one day because I was like, okay, this is really painful. So I made an appointment and saw a doctor and they were like, it's probably nothing, but clearly whatever you have in your arm, it got infected. So here's some antibiotics, here's this or whatever. They gave me like 2 different medications.
Anytime
I was like, cool.
a doctor offers antibiotics, run.
Right? Okay, I know better now. But so I go home, I take these antibiotics, and it was like 2 different types. I don't remember exactly what they were, which I should remember once I finish this story. You're probably like, you should probably remember what you took. But yeah, so it was fine. I feel like the swelling was going down. It wasn't as painful. So I was like, okay, I'm good. I'm in the clear. Now, for context, I should tell you guys that I know Zoe mentioned she has a chronic illness, but I also have an autoimmune disorder as well. So due to the autoimmune disorder, I struggle with eczema, or what I would say is just really bad, like flare-ups that come with like rashes or like skin lesions, like in different areas on my body. And with that comes discomfort. Like I'm used to feeling uncomfortable, especially when I have a flare-up. And for whatever reason, I think it's scientific. I've read about this, but at night it can get really bad in terms of the discomfort and feeling like really, really itchy. So I'm used to that feeling. This is important. So one night during the work week, I realized, I'm like, okay, like I think I'm having a flare up. Like my skin is getting really, really itchy. It feels really uncomfortable. And usually I just have to like do something to get myself to go to sleep. Like it's really difficult, but I've like kind of mastered different ways to be like, okay, like you're okay, like disassociate from your body, right? But this particular night, I was finding it really, really hard to do that. And at this point, this was at a time where me and Zoe actually lived in the same room. And so I was like, okay, I don't want to wake her. Like I don't like crying in front of people, or like just, I don't know, I feel really awkward about that. So I was like, I don't want to be crying in bed and she can hear me. So let me just get out of bed. And our bathroom had a closet inside the bathroom. So you go through the bathroom first. So I went through the bathroom, closed the door, and then from there went into our closet and closed the door. And I was like in a fetal position, and I was like, this is getting really bad. Like I like to think I have a high pain tolerance, but at this point I felt like someone had dipped me in a bed of fire ants. Like my entire body felt like that. And usually with a flare up, I'm not used to it being everywhere. Like it's usually like certain places that are very concentrated. So because of that, I couldn't make myself feel better because every area was like that. So I was like, okay, I was kind of freaking out at that point. I was crying, but I was like, let me get back in bed because I have work in the morning. I need to go to bed. I crawl out of the bathroom into our room again. And at this point, I couldn't even get in my bed. But I was on the side of my bed where Zoe could not see me. And I don't remember how you found me.
I heard you.
At that point, I was so disassociated. And honestly, that's kind of what ties into the episode topic, because I feel like between mentally, physically, and emotionally, I was so dissociated. Zoe actually told me that I kept saying, I have to go to work tomorrow. I have to go to work tomorrow. Yeah. I don't remember that. I think physically I was in a different place and I had to like separate that from where I was emotionally and mentally. But long story short, this has already been a long story. I was not okay. And Zoe got up and she found me there, and she and my brother were like, you have to go to the hospital. Now, if anyone knows me, I don't really like going out places when I look unpresentable. I was so unpresentable at that point, but I was like, you know what? It doesn't even matter. I guess I'm going. So mind you, this is at like 3 a.m. at this point.
And that's why you kept repeating. It's like, no, like, because if I go now, like, I'm gonna be too tired. I won't be able to go to work. Like, girl, are you crazy?
Yeah. Looking back, was crazy, but I was so serious. Like I was more focused on making sure I went to work for whatever reason. So we go to the emergency room, and of course it is like packed. I had never been to the emergency room at this point. It is literally, it was scary, guys. Like there were people, someone's eye was gouged out. People were screaming. People were like, it was just, I had never been in that type of environment.
I feel like, I would have expected that in the day. I think what was crazy is like, I was not expecting it to be that packed at 3 a.m. Like,
Yeah.
People.
Yeah, that's when all the crazy stuff happening, I guess.
happening.
Yeah.
Clearly. So I go up to the counter once I check in, and I ask the guy, like, how quickly could someone see me? Because I literally could barely stand. Like it was so painful.
You couldn't really even speak for yourself by this point, because I think I was like, you were saying a couple things and I was like kind of talking for you, I think.
Right. And thankfully I had Zoe and my brother there who could do that for me. I don't know what I would have done had I been alone. But he was like, look, I don't know what to tell you. He was like, I feel for you, but there is a line. Okay, like they can only see so many people at a time. And we heard another guy be like, say that he had been there since like noon that day, and it was 3 a.m. So I stay there for about an hour. I'm sitting in this chair looking around with all these people going crazy and like looking like they need to be seen immediately. And I was like, okay, I'd rather just go home, because staying here, one, it's very uncomfortable. Like I don't know who's been sitting in these chairs, like people bleeding everywhere.
Looking.
And I was like, I'm just gonna take my chances going home, because what else can I do? So we end up leaving. There, honestly, the emergency room was a whole story. Pretty sure we witnessed someone die, but we'll save that for later. But on our way home, my brother stops, we get Benadryl. I take a whole bunch of Benadryl. Did not work whatsoever. So I go home, get back in bed. I am like, at this point, like I'm literally just in tears, because I don't know what is going on with my body. I call my mom. She was so sweet. She tried to like stay on the phone with me till I got to sleep. But yeah, so basically in the morning, I ended up not going to work. I had to call out, which was very hard for me to do. It was like my sister actually had to text my manager. I did not want to call out. But yeah, in the morning, I went to urgent care, ended up seeing someone, and the guy was like, the doctor, he raised my shirt up because he was like looking at my arms. He was like, okay, like you look really inflamed and red. And then he raised my shirt up and he was like, oh my God. Like he was like, you are literally like, your entire body is inflamed. He was like, I don't know how you didn't go into anaphylactic shock. And he immediately got an EpiPen. And once I was stuck with EpiPen, thankfully, everything kind of calmed down. But, I don't think I mentioned, guys, clearly it's because I had an allergic reaction to the antibiotics that I was on for the cyst in my arm. So that is the story. Ooh. Thankfully, when I went to get the cyst removed, because I had already made an appointment to do that prior to all of this going down. By the time I did that, the doctor was like, thankfully it's gone down already on its own. It's not there anymore. So guys, I am proud to let you guys know that I no longer have a cyst in my arm. I had to go through all of that just to be able to say that. So yeah. Oh, one more thing. I just wanted to mention that the point of this story, and I feel like the takeaway is, like I said, I felt very dissociated mentally, physically, and emotionally. And I feel like mentally, I was telling myself, you have to get through this. Physically, my body was saying, you can't get through this. And emotionally, I feel like it was like, you don't want to get through this. And I think we are so used to not listening to our bodies, or not listening to our emotions. And I just want to encourage people to be more in tune, because sometimes it could be life or death, or it could just be life or death for your soul and your spirit and your will to live. So yeah, I just wanted to end on that note.
That's a word.
All right, everybody. Hope y'all enjoyed that segment. I know I did. So we're going to get back into our topic. So how do we reclaim our time?
Yeah. In a world that's making it fly away like money in the wind.
And putting price tags on it, right?
Is that a song? Oh no, I'm thinking of Dubs in the Wind. I was like, what am I thinking
Money
of?
in the Wind.
Like Money in the Wind.
Bars. No.
I think I kind of peeped at your notes, Zoe. So I feel like you have a good solution or options that people can take away.
To me, like I look at it this way. Like I feel like we live in a system that literally requires like Olympic talent or skill to escape it, or you have to do all these things that basically like sell your soul to even get to the point where you have the resources, the money, the connections or whatever to escape this slavery to the system that we've created. But I do think like for whatever reason, there are people who are gifted with those resources or gifted with that Olympic skill. And I feel like if you have it, I do think, I don't know if I'll go as far as to say you have a responsibility because you didn't choose this life. But I think like if you can use like what you have to propel yourself over these fences and into like a different life, then you can turn back around and like open the gate for somebody else and lift other people up. I think there's a YouTuber, Lynette Atkins, like she uses the phrase, you have to kill the capitalist in your head. But I literally think it's like there has to be a mindset shift so that when we do make it out of these situations for whatever reason, that we have the wherewithal to then make changes that positively impact other people. And then the other option is like because everyone's not going to have those resources, everyone's not going to have that skill level in maybe certain specific areas. But then I think it takes like just radically being able or willing to like literally risk it all for what you believe in. And that means like choosing rest radically. So like in that moment when Kirstin was like, I have to go to work, as she's literally on the brink of like anaphylactic shock, it takes being like, no, like I am not okay. I'm going to figure out what's wrong with my body. I'm going to prioritize myself, and they're just going to have to figure it out at work because I'm not going to die for this job. Like it takes like having that mentality and choosing not just yourself, because it's not just for you. When you do make those choices, it inevitably gives someone else the permission to make that choice as well. Like when you see someone who's like radically choosing life and radically choosing love, radically choosing rest, trust, connection, like you look at them and like it resonates with you and you're like, that's what life's really about. That's what I want. And it makes it possible for other people, I think, to make those choices as well.
I think that's recreating society at whatever cost. Like it may cost you a lot, and I think that's what honestly,
but it's gonna cost you a lot anyway.
I think I know me and Zoe have made choices that reflect that, and I think all three of us are actively searching for ways to recreate society, this podcast being one.
Amen.
You know, I mentioned this is 6 a.m., but you know, we all have other quote unquote regular jobs. And we had to fit this in and make time for it, even though we're tired, even though, you know, there are other things that we could be using this time to do. We realized this is important to us. And this could also help in recreating a society and reshifting people's mindsets to hopefully be in a place years and years down the road where this isn't the song that they're singing. They're not saying time flies when you're trying to survive. They are enjoying their time on this earth. And that's all we could really hope for.
And I actually do want to say something that I haven't fully fleshed out. It kind of just came to me, and I know like everyone might not align with this, and heck, maybe like, you know, at some point I won't either. Like I said, it just came to my mind. But I think like we're saying like you have to like radically do this and like and take the time out. But I think if you're thinking right now, like, look, I really have nothing left. Like I go to my job, I do what I have to do. I have all these other things going on in my life, and I really just feel like I'm tired. I can't. That's valid too. And honor that and know that in the meantime, there are people working to make change. Like when you can't, someone else can. Like there's always someone who is able to do the work and who is doing the work. So rest assured, like things will change. Like it might not be at the pace that we want it to, but you know, if there's one thing this world is good for, it's making you feel like there's not time. Mm-hmm. Time it's just a funny thing, and God's time is not always our time, but like change is going to happen. And I just think about all like people who have died, deaths of despair. I don't think their lives were meaningless.
Hello everyone, this is Zoe here with an important editor's note. Given the sensitivity of this topic, I wanted to make sure I made a very necessary correction to myself. So when I say that the lives of those who died deaths of despair are not meaningless, what I meant to say was that I don't believe their deaths were meaningless, however tragic and heartbreaking and terrible. So with that correction being made, I will allow you guys to continue on with the podcast.
I think, unfortunately, like they got to the point where they felt like that was the only answer, and that is heartbreaking. But at the same time, it has made waves in the world and opened our eyes to the fact that there is a problem. Like, imagine if, people just kind of went along and accepted this life and weren't going to weren't going to such extreme measures. It's like, and I feel like I have to be really careful when I say this, because I don't want to like glamorize their deaths in any way. But I guess I just think like a way to honor them is for us to recognize that there is a significant problem with society that contributed to the loss of life. And there has to be a change.
Yeah, I think we all, when I say all, the three of us want to be a part of creating spaces for people to exist, because I think we've gone so long with feeling like, for those of us who have like autoimmune disorders or like chronic illnesses, or even just something as simple as being an introvert in society, feeling like there isn't, or being a Black woman, like feeling like there are not spaces for us to truly exist and truly get all that we want and need out of life. But if you are at least a part of creating those spaces that you feel like are not there for you, I feel like that is doing your part, and not just doing your part for society, but it's good for your soul too. So
right. And if you can't, like maybe there's some little tiny way you can do it, do that, and know that in the meantime, just hold on, because somebody else is out there doing the work, and we're gonna make it through this.
Yeah. And I would just like to add, as I was listening to y'all, it's a little slightly different, but I feel like another way we can kind of reclaim our time is actually, in a sense, reclaiming our identities outside of what the world puts so much importance on. So I feel like a lot of, especially in America, but definitely worldwide, a lot of identity is wrapped around what you can offer back to society in some way. And you constantly feel this like, well, what am I offering? And all of that pressure, what am I doing? And it has you doing all these things that are basically killing your spirit, or like you're sacrificing your own livelihood in an unhealthy way for something that doesn't really serve anyone in a good way. And it makes me think of, me and Kirstin were talking about an artist, and she had said, and she wasn't saying this necessarily in a negative way, but she was just saying, I don't know if this artist has ever like worked out of their field basically in their life. And my initial thought when I heard that was, it's a negative thing. But then I was like, it's so sad that my thoughts will regard that as negative based upon the way America sees things and like the world sees things. Yeah. We always talk about how people should have to pay their dues, and people should have to work to this point where they have any right to enjoy life, basically. And that sort of mindset is so awful. Yeah. And I feel like a lot of people, including myself to some degree, are like stuck in it, where it's like, this is the point of your life where you're supposed to do that, or that this is just how life works. Like, you're supposed to work that 9 to 5 before you ever hit it off as an artist and like slave away for some company. And then when you have done it for so many years and you've made it, you can be like, this is my story, and this is what y'all have to do. Like, if you're working a 9 to 5 and you're an artist, you should not ever sleep. You should put everything into this. But also, like, let's be real, the system
is rigged to the point that will not work for everyone. Someone can do that,
like it
will not work for them. People, it is designed that only a few can make it.
Can survive.
Yeah, because like think about it. In America, like so much of our society, like we learned with the essential workers. These people are essential. They don't want y'all to elevate in society. Right. We need y'all in them grocery stores. Like, let's be real. Because profit is king in America, they will never pay those people what they are worth to be there. We literally found out you are essential. Our society cannot function without you, so that even in a deadly pandemic, we need you to go to work and risk your life every day to bag these groceries.
Did they give those people raises?
No. To bag these groceries.
And if they did, not enough.
And yet we will not pay you like it. You are struggling to pay your rent. You are struggling to feed your family. But lo and behold, look at it. You essential.
It's essential.
I really cannot, like, America, it's rigged, you guys. They need y'all in those jobs and they don't want to pay you more.
You know what this sounds like, Zoe? It sounds like we need to get a clue.
Oh, what is that?
So guys, our next and final segment of this episode is called Get a Clue. And in this segment, one of us will talk about an issue that we have either dealt with in the past or one that is currently ailing us, then share some advice on how we can overcome it. Today, Zoe will be sharing with us. Zoe, take it away.
All right. So for me, I wanted to talk about something I've dealt with for a while. For lack of a better word, undiagnosed depression. And I think a lot of people can relate to this, maybe not having, the resources to go to a therapist, or like me. At one point, like I didn't have health insurance, so it wasn't really viable to like just go and get some kind of diagnosis, right? So after I quit my corporate job, I thought I would feel happy because I'd saved enough money to, last a few months without getting another job. And so that was supposed to be time for me to work on myself, to work on creating a business of my own, just all of this stuff. And I was supposed to feel happy, but I didn't. I felt relieved not having to go to my job. I definitely felt relief, but it almost just gave me enough time to sit with myself and realize for the first time, like how I really felt. When I was at my job, I was anxious, but I feel like after I quit, I felt depressed. And I genuinely just hadn't felt happy for a long time until recently. So I want to just share with you guys like some things that have been working for me, because I know everyone doesn't have access to a therapist or to like mental health resources. And sometimes you got to just be your own best friend for a minute. So like this is just some of the things that have helped me. So one day, like I was just feeling really bad, and I was like, I don't want to feel this way anymore. And I know it's not as simple as making a choice, but I chose to like not be emotionally numb anymore, because I realized in not feeling happiness, I just had kind of closed myself off to emotion in general. So I told myself, you know what, like I'm going to let myself feel the pain so that I can feel the good things too. And I decided I wanted to live my life more intuitively, like just actually feel everything. And it has made all of the difference. So in that, like I just started paying attention to life, paying attention to signs and things I was seeing. And, it might have been a placebo effect, but if it feeds your spirit, like that's honestly like what matters. For instance, in the month of August, like I had a theme, and my theme was energy, and anything that kind of spoke to that, I'm like, that's a sign. I need to like pay attention to that. I need to start doing that. I started doing Pilates. I started doing like deep belly breaths, and it just helped so much like with my mental clarity and my mental health. I chose like a color of the month that every time I saw that color, it would remind me of my theme of that month, remind me of what I was like focusing on. And I just felt like it really shifted my focus from thinking about all the bad things that would happen every day. And instead I would think of like all the serendipitous things that happen. So like I would think, oh my gosh, that's so crazy. Like that's my color, or that's a sign, or like that's speaking to like my theme this month. And collecting all those small little things that would happen each day. It's not like the bad stuff went away or that I never felt bad. I just had more good stuff to actually balance it out, so that I wasn't just ruminating in my sadness and what I couldn't change every single day. And so yeah, like my advice ultimately is just to be open to the chaos of life and how crazy and beautiful this world is. And as much sadness and pain and all these awful things that exist, beauty also exists in equal measure. And we don't have to close ourselves off to all of the bad things. In fact, like when we close ourselves off to pain, we close ourselves off to feeling, and that means the good things too. So just embrace the spectrum of life, embrace the spectrum of emotion that we as humans are capable of. And I think you will begin to find life more tolerable. So yeah, that's my clue.
Very well said.
Get it?
Well, thank all of y'all so much for tuning into our first episode of All the Calamity. I'm so thankful that y'all took some time out of y'all day to listen. To find out what our next episode is going to be about, go follow us on Instagram at All the Calamity. But until next time, y'all enjoy your day.
Thanks, guys. Bye, guys.